start with one concern about this, the 1.6. Why we have not been very efficient up to now? I don't believe it, because we are here because we started a long time ago to work together. Otherwise, it's a cultural problem. We started to understand each other in terms of dictionary. It was the first approach. And now we are we progress a lot, not sufficiently, but with respect to the consideration of Monty, obviously we can work together where we are converging interest. It means in places in which you are interested to do the science. No, it's not enough for us, but we can concentrate, particularly in that places that are in Mediterranean. It's nice for us. And to do something. But the question, we start also to have a technological links. Now we have to go further. We already started in terms of science and to think together what we can do, what we can explore. And for me, it's very exciting. Let me say.
Of course, from the seismological point of view, you cannot study earthquakes where you don't have earthquakes, and we are not able to move the place where earthquakes are. So it's a little difficult to put the instrumentation where the seismologists are already interested for scientific point of view. But I'm quite sure that synergy in instrumentation developments is very efficient. And what I have seen from the collaboration in Antares is that, in fact, you get much more data than what you could have if you just put a seismometer, even not cable, but even cable. If you put just the seismometer, you have also the temperature, current, and so on. And there is a synergy between the community just looking for different data and bringing new information from the interpretation of their own data, which is very important also in the scientific point of view. You have to deal with another kind of data which can bring some information. So this is quite important, and only for this I think that the synergy and going to the place where there is other instrumentation is important.
Well, I thought I was going to be the first person to point out that actually the synergies are not always perfect. So thank you, Anne, for pointing out that this isn't always a perfect marriage. And my view is certainly that there are some, in the same way as Anne has just said, I think there are some potential advantages, but the requirements, let's say for the water column observing systems, are to get a large geographical diversity. As a result of that, it is quite simple to think of multidisciplinary, not interdisciplinary, but multidisciplinary relationships with the geosciences communities, but harder because they will be going to probably a number of locations which will be probably diverse in the upper water column. It is less easy to think of there being very large synergies with the astroparticle physicists if they are just at one location. So there are definitely synergies, but it isn't something which is just a complete match. And those synergies are in the development of instrumentation, for instance, data management, one could see communications, perhaps. There's various areas, but it's not a panacea. I would agree with Paolo very strongly that the marine sciences and geosciences community have really been working, pulling together over the last decade or so, and I think there's still a way to go, but it is definitely moving in the right direction, and I think we're much more coherent now than we were previously. So I've got some optimism, but not necessarily with all of the astroparticle physics community.
I think Much of what needs to be said has already been said. However, I do think that the astroparticle physics community has a need that's very specific for a particular cabled observatory. They need to be in a particular place where they can get the data they need. The environmental science community may be able to benefit from being in that particular area, but will always have a spatial diversity that they need to pursue as well. And consequently, I think that I'm not quite sure how the synergy is going to work, but I think the astroparticle physics community needs to make sure that they are in the right place for their science to be done properly. And if, in addition, it can be an area where there are particularly interesting environmental science questions, that would be valuable. But I think that we should not lose sight of what the astroparticle physics community needs first. Yeah.
I'd have a slightly different comment. It seems to me, this has been a great session, and certainly great learning, I think, certainly just speaking personally. But the astrophysics community, to me, is rather different than the earth science community. And so, just to say there should be synergies is a little simplistic. Right? But I think if you also, I'd like to make comments in general for any kind of scientific development in a very competitive world, in a world which doesn't have a lot of cash around at the present time, isn't likely to for the next couple of decades. So what are the criteria by which you can be successful in big science? All right, one is excellence, right? Excellence from a scientific viewpoint. The other is innovation, all right, to keep it and be seen to be keeping at the cutting edge. The third is relevance to society's needs, and society's needs are going to get greater in terms of the economy, but also environmental and a whole series of issues facing a planet that's under considerable stress, right? And so when we try to advocate what we need, right, in our communities, let alone the synergy in here, it's going to be a very competitive world. And so what I haven't heard a lot of is how we work together to actually drive costs down, all right, so that we can be competitive against other proposals going forward. And I think in this case, what we have a couple of people representing industry here, but again, typically at our workshops, we don't. They have their workshops, we have ours, and usually it's just a few people coming. We have to have a greater synergy with the people that put in the infrastructure by contract, right? The Alcatelas of the world, or the L3 Maripros, and also the instrument manufacturers. The ODI is an example, which is, we've had a lot of trouble with them because it's the only game in town, right? And yet we have not worked in a synergetic way ourselves to come together to essentially argue the case for what we want out of industry and to sort of make sure we get it at a reasonable cost. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. So before giving the floor to the others, I would like to say, I hope you understood from the point of view of the organization, we did not organize this workshop around the infrastructure, the neutrino telescope infrastructure. It was clear that it was, you saw, we've heard from Marcia, we wanted you to see the enthusiasm, the fact that some of astrophysicists and astroparticles are hooked to the problems, and they start as true physicists being interested by what they are seeing and not by the final goal. And this was, I think you got the message. It's not, we're not trying to build, money conditions around a big infrastructure or whatever it is. Our goal is to try to see the synergies and move forward, as you said, towards how to put down costs for all the infrastructure we're interested, being earth science or on neutrino. So having said this, the words from the sponsor, please.
Yeah, I would like to react on the last speaker, and I heard you saying that the contact with industry has to do with to explain the industry on how to make our instruments. I think that should go the other way around, and what I think the financiers of us see is what can we mean for the industry. And I think here is what you are doing. We are working all in very extreme environments, so we constantly have to think at the edge of technological possibilities and develop completely new solutions to constraints and to overwin those constraints. And that is where I think industry has a very great interest in all that creative thinking that comes out of you on how to solve technological problems and how to overcome these things. So that is where I think all sorts of other industry will say, yes, that's an interesting solution. Now we are going to produce that in series and earn a lot of money with it.
My point, if I may, was I don't disagree with what I was saying, is the synergy. We've had a lot of synergy amongst scientific groups here. We don't have many meetings where we deliberately try to develop synergy as a group with a group of industry. And I think we could move industry along a lot quicker and develop a lot more tools for us if we had that mechanism. I don't think there's a whole lot of structured synergy. It's ad hoc.
Other interventions?
So I agree that it doesn't seem that the neutrino telescope will provide us with the possibility to build up a global network of observatories. That's for sure. I think what could be the focus, though, is that one looks into, from the ocean sciences perspective, looks into questions, specific questions that could be tackled with the specific opportunities that a network of sensor strings actually provides. So look into processes that could be addressed on that spatial scale, where you could make use of this opportunity to have a 3D grid of sensors probably installed. And I think there was examples from the oceanography side, where it's a lot about temporal but also spatial scales. And I don't know if that happens at the same scale, so that you actually can make use really of it. But another thing was this mammal tracking, where of course a broad grid of hydrophones is very useful if you want to see where the animals actually are. So there, this is at a specific point, and it might not be the most interesting point for a lot of things that you do, but still we could think of investigations that make use of this grid and of the spatial scale that is available there. And I guess, without having hundreds of ideas now, but I guess there's oceanography questions that could make use of that.
Well, I just had one comment to Christopher Barnes' comment on trying to reduce the costs. In fact, I realise now, I forgot in my presentation some R&D that researchers at our lab are doing, which was to reduce the cost of these connectors. So the idea was to essentially use a dry mateable connector, but use it under the sea by encasing it with an oil volume around it while you make the connection under the water. So I think there are synergies there in technological developments, which in fact is resulting in a startup company in Marseille now. So I should have mentioned that, and I forgot to. But I think just advertising these new developments to the whole community would be already a big progress. So more communication between the communities would be a big step.
My experience over the years is the following. For example, when it comes to industry. The industry is moving into deeper and deeper waters. And when I talk to the environmental groups of those industries, I hear from them that if there would be pressure from the European Union by law to, for example, always install observatories at their site, they would do it. But because there is no pressure from the law, there will be no installation. And these environmental groups they really want to collaborate with scientists, but they say when there's no force from the law, we won't do it. So again and again and again, I think we must try to show to the policymakers that they have to come up with these laws, both for all the continental margins and for the deep sea now in the Pacific Ocean. I think Richard would be happy to have one on these on the manganese nodules area in the South Pacific or Central Pacific. If we would say, the law of the sea would say, or these nations would say, if Germany wants to find out if they claim to work there, they have to install a long-term observatory there. They have to do it. And if Statoil goes deeper and deeper, the law would say to Statoil, to the environmental groups, you have to install an observatory, they would get the observatory. As long as they don't get it, as long as there's no law, they won't get one. So this is one thing. The other thing is, I think we are still lacking. It looks always like a party, and we are all waiting for the one leader who is so convincing that the politicians at the end will say, like, now we want to do it. This is really a great time. And I think it's just the way it is. There must be one person who is charismatic enough and has the time. Most of you are charismatic, of course, but you don't have the time. We need somebody who takes the time to talk to these people. Maybe, for example, together with one of these physicists, maybe an older guy. I haven't seen any older physicists here, just these youngsters. They can't do the work at the moment. Maybe we need one of those. Maybe they should work together, because the physicists are much more capable of attracting money than the oceanographers, ocean scientists people are. So that thing. And then, of course, we need to have great science, of course. And then I see over all these years, everybody says, no, I would like to have an observatory here, or here, or here, or here. The astroparticle physics people say, no, we want to have it here. So if Europe would conclude, or if you would all decide to go for one location, probably that would even work out. But it's not good. We need to have more locations. So it's really ups and downs. But most interesting, maybe somebody like let's say like John Delaney, okay? He convinced you. Then you could convince the government, but you need somebody like John. John, internally within the scientific community, has his problems, I think. I realize that. But he was charismatic enough to get the funds. And we just don't have that person at the moment in Europe, probably. That's just the way it is.
I want to say that using an interest telescope, for example, can open new view or how we can do our research. I would like to give an example. You have linked deep convection with bioluminescence. And so now we are able to, because the interest telescope is cabled, to see immediately what's happened in the deep. So we can imagine, for example, instead of ask the ship time 2 years ago, two years before to sample during a deep sea convection, we can imagine to opportunistic ship in order to do some research cruise, and we can imagine, for example, now the event is coming, we can go to the sea in some day maybe, but it will be possible to open new view on our perspective actually. And the second thing is putting some instruments with communication. Is it possible also to modify the instruments, for example, the time of sampling, etc. And we can imagine also some instrumentation that can take some samples because it is the good time to have these samples. So this can open very new insights in research, and I would like that my colleague was more convinced, but I am convinced for that.
I forgot something, sorry.
God bless.
I'm in the German commission who decides where the ships go. And I increasingly realize that there are, the proposals go down. There's a lot of ships in Germany, and maybe not so many proposals anymore. And it might not be so problematic in the future. Maybe all of Europe has to say, okay, next, when there's a new ship to come, we should all decide, maybe we shouldn't buy that ship, because we can do great research with 100 million euros on one specific site. And then one by one, country by country, has to go for that, and then this money is saved. I just see it for Germany. Maybe it's different in other countries. I think Germany has 29 research vessels, and not even an ocean, but that's a problem maybe.
No, I think we retained your argument about the site selection. It's a very important point, but of course we cannot. Yes, robotic physics is not as great as you say. Still, I think it's something that is in the synergies in the future that we have to pin down and somehow find good charismatic sites also. So I didn't want to so let's try, because in 5 minutes we finish, so we have these other comments.
Try to be fast.
No, take your time, it's fine.
So I would like to comment on the data access. Before I was coming here, I talked to several modelers who work in the Mediterranean, and some of them didn't know even that this was existing. It's a huge infrastructure that observes all the time, but people don't know that it exists. And it's very important to give data to others. And in this way, I mean, there are other groups that may have some ideas how to use this data. And so like we do actually in GNES, in the operational oceanography, so data are available almost in real time and without any, of course, one has to reference the source, but there is no limit on the use of that.
I had to look in my notes, and there was this wonderful definition of synergy, and that was, I have to get my glasses here, because that is that two or more partners can achieve something that each of them alone cannot achieve, but that in collaboration with one another they can achieve. Now, what I'm going to ask both of the communities is, where are in your own community now the bottlenecks, the major things that hold you back? And I don't want to hear the word money. I don't want to hear the word I want more data, because I don't think that is exactly what you are looking for. So anything else where you see in the oceanographic community, what do we need to know about, for instance, things like global warming, that we do not know now, and that we don't know how to get that information. And that the other community can say, ah yes, but we do know that, and we can solve that for you. And then the other way around, because then is where you really come to sort of a shift in paradigm. Because what I hear from all this talk is that the technological development to have more refined data will not create paradigm shifts, but it is the solving of bottlenecks in your research field that might give that paradigm shift. So where are the bottlenecks?
So I find this is a very nice introduction to the second question, because there's no more comments on the first part. We believe there are some type of definition of synergies, and now we go to how, let's say, okay, first define the synergy now, and what the bottlenecks, and of course, what would be helpful to continue this meeting with.
I think one thing is we should be aware that the whole idea of science is that you should be surprised by the results. I mean, we heard today that the first deployment of hydrophones was surprised at how they detected sperm whales instead of neutrinos. And maybe we haven't built enough on that, because in reality, we saw 5 minutes. this should be, we should be putting more effort into that. And the same, with the discovery of the open water convection and bioluminescence. I think already the presence of the neutrino telescope architecture is changing Mediterranean marine science, and we should shout more about that. And even without building new infrastructure, we should be looking at ways in which the data can be accessed and used more by people. The other synergies is partly in personnel. I remember once I complained that the oil industry in Aberdeen kept stealing my best people, and the room laughed. They said, well, Professor Priede, that's exactly what you should be doing, is producing good people. And I think we should emphasize that the community here can generate good people, and as industry moves deeper, they will develop things. But I think this meeting has set a bit more of a focus, because in the EMSO-ESONET community we've talked in a rather general way about having an MOU between KM3net and EMSO, and I think we need maybe to start focusing in on questions at the scientific sites, and I would like to see us looking critically from the Earthsea science community at interesting objects, locations and things we can do at the KM3net candidate sites.
So we go now in this part. I mean, probably Anne would like.
Well, I have to go.
Oh yes, so Anne, please.
Sorry. So, to answer a little to your question, are we sure as scientists that we can know before working with some representation or discussion with the other, what could be the benefit from one community from the other? I'm thinking about the records that we have, which we are looking for earthquakes. But in the record of the ground motion, we have noise, and noise, which is all which is for us, all which is not earthquakes, can be for the other community some way to understand their problem and the questions that they have to answer. So I think that it's very important to meet or to have such kind of discussion, not only while we are working together, but while some presentation can suggest new development, just putting data together. So it's not new data, but it's a new way to consider the data, which is very important to make this synergy.
Okay, I should maybe first say that I am deeply honored being called a youngster for the first time since 20 years ago. I would like to start to give an answer to your question from the neutrino telescope point of view. I think there is not a single bottleneck